Hi, welcome back to Spoilers with Friends with me and Anne. And remember to hit like and subscribe and that little bell notification button so you know when I put up more videos. And today we're going to be talking about The Awakening. So initial thoughts, Anne?
That's one of my favorite ghost movies, especially to come out in the last 10 years. I love it. It has everything. It has romance. It has a really cool building. It has bullies. It has several little subplots going on that all mesh together well at the end. It has twists and turns, science. It's a good story.
Yeah, it's got a lot going for it and some ideas that I haven't seen so much before. One of the things that kind of comes up and gets explained a little more toward the end is that there is a ghost, but he's only seen by people who are really lonely because he's lonely. And at some point, the caretaker woman says because it happens at a boarding school, says that some of the boys are getting so lonely they're starting being able to see him. So it's like the ghost is at the school all the time, but unless you're lonely, he's invisible to you.
Only the lonely.
Yeah. So that was kind of an interesting idea, where the ghost isn't just appearing to people because they're sensitive or for whatever reason. There is a reason why most people don't see him, and then only a few people do see him. And so the main character does see him and doesn't find out till like almost 9/10 of the way through the movie that, oh, he's not even there.
It's almost like that whole section is an afterthought. But it does fit in with the rest of the movie, but it's not really the climax. It's like there's a climax and then there's kind of another little climax, but very interesting story, and very strong woman character, and very strong for her time period. I like that. I like her character.
Yeah, there are a lot of cool characters in here, and because the building is gorgeous and very interesting as they keep walking through. Building that's supposed to have originally been a family home and it's been turned into this boarding school. So about halfway through the movie, the kids go home for some kind of break. And so then it's that big, empty, interesting building.
Right. And I love the painting of Judith.
Yeah.
Because my first name is Judith. And I have a painting of Judith in my law office, of course. And I like that she explains who the painting is.
Right. It says Judith Canal Holofernes' head.
Right.
Because whoever she's talking to doesn't know that Bible story.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it is I can't remember who actually painted that, but it's a pretty famous painting.
I don't remember who painted that one.
I'll have to stick it in the description and look it up later.
I have a Botticelli one, but it's not the one in the movie.
So, so this movie takes place after World War I, which is a really interesting setting. We don't do a lot of World War I stuff over here, I don't think, and we don't have nearly the kind of memorials. I mean, if you go to Europe, right, every street seems to have like another memorial to people who died in World War I. Of course, we were only in it for like a year, but Europe slogged through it for 4 years and lost just millions and millions of people. So the experience in Europe was so different than what the experience was over here. And I think if you don't understand some of that, you might miss some of what's going on.
Right, and this is an English movie, so the English audience would definitely understand this. And the main character is a ghost debunker, and I think one of the most poignant spots is where the very beginning. She's just debunked a set of spiritualists that are claiming to be able to connect people with their dead relatives, and she exposes all these people and how obvious their fakes are. And one of the family members afterwards smacks her in the face. I think you get the point that this lady is so devastated by the loss of her child that she wanted that illusion to keep going, and she didn't care if it was fake. And she's horribly angry that Miss Cathcart, the main character, has blown it for her.
Right. And so I want to bring up this book. It's very interesting. You may want to read it if you can, or get it from a library, The Great Silence. And this is about after the war, basically. Part of the reason that the English suffered a lot is that somewhere earlier in the War Department decided they weren't going to ship any bodies back home. It was just too hard to do that. And of course, a lot of people were getting blown up by artillery, and you weren't really finding them anyway. So if there was a body, it got buried in France or Belgium or wherever the battle was, but nobody came back home. And so you have this whole society of people that have lost this entire generation. I think somewhere in here she says that 30% of the men between 21 and 24 when the war started died. Okay, 30%. We're not talking about a few people. We're talking like, almost every young man in your village is dead. Everybody's lost maybe a husband and a brother and a father and a nephew. So the kind of grief that the whole country was going through and nobody could have a funeral was just something you can't even imagine. And she really tries to paint that picture in this book. I do have a couple quotes here. This one's from page 96 because it's about the spiritualism really got big after the war because everybody wanted that closure. You weren't able to have a funeral. You didn't have a body to bury. You didn't have anything. So people went to the mediums and the psychics to try to get that last message. And so she says, the relaying of comforting messages of reassurance from loved ones reaching out to their families from beyond the grave were seized on in particular by the middle and upper classes who could afford the expensive connections to the spirit world. But the spirits had no substance, and a reaching out to their elusive nothingness simply increased the hopelessness of the corner. So a lot of people did the spiritualism thing, but it doesn't seem to have helped much. And then another quote, this one, page 37, from the Countess of Fingal, whoever that is. But she apparently wrote in a letter or something, I used to think and say during the war that if ever that list of dead and wounded would cease, I would never mind anything or grumble at anything again. But when the armistice came at last, we were drained of all feeling. One felt nothing. We took up our lives again, or tried to take them up. The world we had known had vanished. We hunted again, but ghosts rode with us. We sat at table and there were absent faces. And I really, that line where she says the ghosts rode with us really resonates, I think, because in the movie, the main character does have this discussion on how they've lost so much in the war, they haven't been able to move on, that we became ghosts ourselves, she says to the other main character. And so these are people who are walking through their lives, but not really living their lives. And everybody's in this boat after the war, and they don't know how to get out. She talks in this book too about how people before the war were much more open with their emotions in public. We think of the British stiff upper lip sort of thing, but really some of that happened during this time where once you've lived through this and you've lost everyone, no one displayed emotions anymore. They were numb, but also people didn't want to impose on other people because you knew the other person that also lost a bunch of people. And so you didn't feel like, blurting out your grief to them because they're also grief stricken. So everybody was just sort of wandering around in their own cloud of hopelessness and grief and not being able to get out from under it. They didn't have any hope. They couldn't figure out how to cope with this sort of thing. So
a lot of the characters in this movie are wandering around in their own cloud of misery. The main male character is injured and he, hides in his room and screams at his pain and doesn't talk about it with anybody. And another guy faked an injury to get out of going. And I noticed that they're looking at the photographs and the man is pointing out that there's this ghostly image. And Florence says, well, we know what happened to that generation of boys. So that theme resonates all the way through the movie. And I think it probably is a lot easier for European viewers to pick that up, or Americans who know a little more history.
Yeah, I think as long as you know a little bit about it, you'll understand why everybody's going to these psychics, and I'm not sure why they're bringing the police in. I can't find anything about spiritualism being illegal or anything, but Miss Cathcart, the main character, once she has debunked the psychics, she calls in the police and the psychics are arrested. So they're doing something wrong, but I haven't been able to discover exactly what.
It's considered fraud in a lot of places.
Maybe
I'd have to look that up, but yeah, if you're selling something that you're obviously faking, so it's kind of a fine line if somebody's just claiming they're giving you a reading, but that's pretty obvious fraud if you've got a little boy, dressed as a dead girl and the candle snuffing and all the brouhaha that they were doing to try to make people think that there were ghosts.
Yeah. So definitely, there's a lot going on in this movie, and just having a little bit of knowledge of, say, Europe after the war too, helps, I think, to understand what the characters are going through, because we really don't have that over here so much after that particular war.
Yeah. But it's a really good story, like I said, with several subplots that are worthwhile and go together at the end. And it's good.
I have another book here I'm just going to show off. I got this one somewhere in Britain. I can't remember where, but it is Flanders Field, Other Poems of the First World War. But the interesting thing about this book is there's about 30 or 32 poets featured in here. But to get featured in this particular book, you had to die during the war. So if you know of someone who wrote poetry during World War I, but they survived, they're not in here. So you're looking at, like, they lost at least 30 published poets.
Wow.
So because
extrapolate the percentage of the population likely to be published poets, and they lost an awful lot of people.
Right, because surely there are a lot more butchers or whatever farmers, but yeah, just 30 poets.
Wow.
So, and that may not even be all of them. That's the number I think featured in the book. So when you can do that, you've lost a significant portion of your population, and people are really, really reeling from that. And I think that is really what underscores this whole movie, that people just haven't been able to move on.
Right.
Fortunately, our main characters do get some kind of catharsis. Now it looks like at the end they are maybe going to be able to start making a new life and put that old life, not forget it obviously, but kind of put it away and be able to move on.
Yeah, spoiler, it actually has a happy ending, which was a big surprise to me because I figured it was going to be a normal, miserable horror movie ending, but it actually is a happy one.
Yeah, well, it's more or less happy. Now that the main character knows that she can kind of move on emotionally, she's not lonely enough to see the little ghost boy anymore. And so he's upset because he turns out, or I remember this is spoilers with friends, turns out to be her brother, and that she repressed those memories, so she didn't realize at the time, well, for most of the movie, that he's her brother. But he has wanted to see her again so badly, and then she comes back and she's so lonely, she's able to see him right away, and very few people can see him. He's basically been overjoyed to have his sister back. And now, if she survives this movie and she goes on, she's not going to be lonely enough to see him anymore, and he's going to be alone again. So he doesn't get the happy ending. The little ghost boy doesn't. But
That's true.
But some of the other characters get their endings. So, All right, so obviously you'll probably want to give this 5 creepy doll heads then.
I do. It's very stylishly done, tastefully done. It's just, I think, top notch.
Yep, I think.
And my standards are pretty low actually some of the time. So this is a classy movie.
This is a very good movie, and if we haven't spoiled it too much for you, definitely watch this one.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you next time on Spoilers with Friends. Bye-bye.